Alex Eala just did something nobody in professional tennis predicted. She walked onto the grass courts of Berlin's Steffi Graf Stadium as a wild card, looked world number 2 Elina Svitolina in the eye, and beat her in straight sets, 7-5, 6-4. No tiebreaks, no three-set survival act. A clean, composed two-set takedown of the reigning Australian Open champion on the afternoon of that champion's birthday. And now, riding an adrenaline wave that has an entire nation staying up past midnight to follow along, Eala must sit down, breathe, and reckon with the fact that her reward is Elina Svitolina, a woman who 6 weeks ago in Rome beat the world numbers 2, 3, and 4 in consecutive matches to win one of the most prestigious titles in the sport. Let's talk about what actually happened against Svitolina first, because the details matter for understanding what comes next. Eala was down a break early in the first set. Svitolina was launching aces and cracking her first serve at full velocity, and at 4-1 it looked like the evening would be short. Filipino fans watching at 1 o'clock in the morning were reaching for the off switch. Then something shifted. Svitolina's forehand, which has been misfiring since the clay season, started leaking errors. Not a few. 41 unforced errors by the end of the match. That is a staggering number for someone of her caliber. Eala, to her immense credit, recognized the moment the tide was turning and stayed exactly where she needed to be, inside the baseline when the rally allowed it, patient on the return, and suddenly serving with a pace that would have been unrecognizable 6 months ago. Multiple commentators and fans noted serves landing in the mid-160s in kilometers per hour. Last season, Eala routinely served below 145. On grass, where the low bounce and quick surface conditions help mask a weaker delivery. That extra velocity is the difference between holding serve comfortably and fighting for every service game. She finished with aces that made the crowd take notice. But here is the honest context that cannot be stripped away in the rush of celebration. Svitolina arrived in Berlin carrying a 7-5 record since winning Stuttgart. Her forehand has gone missing. Her movement between points carries the sluggish energy of someone who has played too many tournaments without a break. She was by any reasonable assessment a diminished version of herself. That does not erase what IGA did. You still have to hit the ball over the net and into the court against one of the biggest servers on tour. But it frames the quarterfinal challenge in much sharper relief because Elina Svitolina is not diminished. Elina Svitolina is operating at perhaps the highest sustained level of her career. Consider the arithmetic of Svitolina's 2026. She opened the year by winning Auckland without dropping a set. She reached the quarterfinals at the Australian Open. She made the quarterfinals at Indian Wells. Then came the clay season and something extraordinary happened. At Rome's Internazionale BNL d'Italia, she carved through a draw that read like a who's who of women's tennis. She beat Svitolina in the quarterfinal, IGA Swiatek in the semifinal, and Coco Gauff in the final to lift a WTA 1000 trophy for the first time since 2018, her third Rome title overall. The final against Gauff went 3 sets, 6-4, 6-7, 6-2, and Svitolina closed the deciding set by winning the last 4 games with a kind of ruthless efficiency that separates the merely good from the genuinely elite. Her 2026 record entering Berlin stood at 32 wins and 8 losses. She was leading the tour in total victories. That is not a hot streak. That is a season-long campaign of controlled, methodical, relentless tennis from a woman who turned 31 last September. In Berlin, she has barely been tested. Anna Kalinskaya withdrew injured in the first round after Svitolina had already taken the first set 6-1. In the round of 16, she dispatched the home crowd favorite Elina 6-3, 6-2 in 69 minutes, serving 8 aces and conceding just 1 break despite some late wobbles when trying to close out sets. She saved 7 of the 8 break points she faced. Svitolina in this form does not give you free points. She does not hand you rallies with wild swings. She absorbs pace, redirects it, and waits for you to make the mistake. And this is where the tactical picture for the quarterfinal gets genuinely complex because the thing Ella did so well against Svitolina, staying steady while the opponent's self-destructed, is not a strategy that works against Svitolina. It is almost the opposite of what Svitolina offers. Svitolina's 41 unforced errors were gifts. Svitolina almost never gives gifts. Her entire competitive identity, refined across more than 500 career singles wins, is built on forcing you to earn every single point. She hits heavy, top-spin-loaded ground strokes that keep landing deep. She moves well enough laterally to neutralize angles. And her return game is among the best on tour. Against someone like Eala, whose serve has improved but remains far from elite, that return game is a significant weapon. Several observers noted after the Rybakina match that Eala's 110 km/h body serves troubled Becker and a misfiring Rybakina, but are unlikely to trouble Svitolina in the same way. Svitolina has seen and returned bigger serves her entire career. She will stand inside the baseline, take Eala's delivery early, and immediately apply pressure. So, if Eala cannot rely on Svitolina making errors, and she cannot rely on her serve alone to generate free points, what exactly is the path to an upset? The first answer is pace off the ground. Eala's forehand and backhand are hit remarkably flat for someone her size, and on grass that flatness translates into shots that skid through the court and stay low. The difference between playing Svitolina on clay and playing her on grass is significant. On clay, Svitolina's deep topspin shots kick up into a comfortable hitting zone, and she has all the time in the world to reset between rallies. On grass, the ball stays lower, rallies compress, and Svitolina's margin for getting into position shrinks. If Eala can consistently drive the ball through the court at pace, not pushing, not slicing defensively, but genuinely ripping through her shots, she can force Svitolina into an uncomfortable rhythm. The grass helps her here. Every flat forehand that would land mid-court on clay stays low on grass and forces Svitolina to bend her knees and generate her own pace, rather than borrowing from the incoming shot. The second answer is Eala's movement and court intelligence. This does not get discussed enough. Eala's ability to read the game, to anticipate where the next shot is going, has consistently been one of her most underrated qualities. Against top 10 players, she is now 5 wins from 4 losses against them. She repeatedly demonstrates an ability to be in the right position before the ball arrives. Against Swiatek in Miami 2025, against Keys in that same tournament, against Rybakina yesterday, there were moments where she looked like she knew the pattern before her opponent had committed to it. That kind of tactical awareness is not a fluke. It is the product of thousands of hours of doubles play, which Eala takes seriously, and an increasingly sophisticated understanding of geometry and shot selection. Against Svitolina, who plays with patterns and consistency rather than raw power, that court intelligence will be critical. Eala needs to identify when Svitolina is building toward a particular combination and disrupt it with a change of direction, a sudden drop shot, or an approach to the net. Speaking of the net, this is a dimension of grass court tennis that Eala can exploit and that Svitolina historically has not loved facing. Eala is comfortable at the net. Her doubles experience has given her touch and reflexes that many baseline-oriented singles players simply do not possess. On grass, where approach shots stay low and passing shot windows narrow, coming forward is not reckless. It is sound strategy. If Eala can volley effectively and put pressure on Svitolina's passing shots, she forces the Ukrainian to produce something extraordinary under time pressure. That is a different proposition from the baseline rallies where Svitolina thrives. But here is the counter-argument, and it is substantial. Svitolina's career grass record of 53.5% is not spectacular, but that number disguises the fact that she reached the Wimbledon semifinal in 2019 and again in 2023, beating some of the best grass court players in the world along the way. She knows how to compete on the surface at the highest level, and her 2026 form transcends any surface-specific limitation. When you have beaten the second, third, and fourth-ranked players in the world in consecutive rounds at a major tournament, you carry a confidence that does not evaporate because the surface changed. Svitolina in Berlin looks comfortable. She looks like she belongs. She looks like someone who has already processed the biggest moments the season can offer and came through them standing. There is also the question of experience under exactly this kind of spotlight. Svitolina has played 20 WTA finals. She has won titles on 4 different surfaces. She has competed in every significant stadium in women's tennis. For Eala, this quarterfinal in Berlin is the deepest run she has ever made at a WTA 500 event. There is a difference between beating a faltering opponent and sustaining your level across an entire match against someone who never gives you a rest. Svitolina will test Ella's stamina, her concentration, and her ability to manage the emotional hangover from a career-best victory. That hangover is real. After beating the world number 2, the temptation is to float on adrenaline. Adrenaline is fantastic for one set. It is dangerous in a second set when your opponent has steadied the ship and is grinding you down point by point. The physicality of this matchup is worth examining. Svitolina is 5'9" with a build designed for endurance. She can sustain high-intensity rallies deep into a third set without her level dropping. Ella is 5'6" and while she has improved her fitness considerably over the past year, has not yet demonstrated that she can hang with the tour's best over a prolonged physical contest on consecutive days. She played Vekic on Tuesday, Rybakina on Thursday, and now faces Svitolina on Friday with barely any recovery time. That compressed schedule favors the player with the deeper reserves. And right now that player is Svitolina. Yet something has happened to Ella on grass this June that resists easy explanation through statistics alone. Since arriving in Birmingham at the start of the month, she has won 7 matches on the surface, dropping only one set in the Birmingham final against Bartunkova before fighting back to win the title. She beat Vekic for the third time in 2026. She came back from 1-4 down against the world number 2. There's a quality to her grass court tennis right now. The crispness of her timing, the improvement in her serve, the way she moves on the surface with a low center of gravity that suits the fast footing. That suggests this is not a random hot streak, but something closer to a genuine fit between player and surface. Several experienced commentators have noted the comparison to Angelique Kerber, another left-hander with limited serving power, but exceptional return skills, anticipation, and flat ball striking who found her best tennis on grass and hard courts while struggling on clay. If that comparison holds, and it is still early, then grass might be where Ella's career finds its highest ceiling. The quarterfinal will likely be decided by a few key questions. Can Ella hold her own service games against Svitolina's returns? In the Rybakina match, she held serve well enough, but Rybakina's returning was poor by her own standards. Svitolina's returning will be far more disciplined and precise. If Ella faces multiple break points per service game, the psychological pressure will be enormous, and she will need to find serves in the 160-plus range consistently rather than occasionally to bail herself out. Can Ella generate enough offense in rallies to prevent Svitolina from dictating play? Svitolina likes rallies in the 8-12 shot range where she can systematically move her opponent around and wait for the short ball. Ella needs to shorten points either by hitting winners inside the first 4 or 5 shots or by moving forward and finishing at the net. Can Ella manage the emotional and physical toll of 3 matches in 4 days against increasingly difficult opposition? This is the question that has no answer until the match is underway. The betting markets and the analytical community will favor Svitolina, and they should. Svitolina's form is more proven. Her path through the draw has been smoother. Her physical reserves are less taxed and her game presents fewer of the exploitable weaknesses that Rybakina offered. A reasonable assessment puts this at roughly 60-40 in Svitolina's favor. Maybe even 65-35. Svitolina is the better player right now by ranking, by results, by recent titles, and by sheer weight of accumulated experience in exactly these kinds of moments. But, reasonable assessments have not described Alex Eala's June particularly well. She was not supposed to win Birmingham as a top seed against her own doubles partner. She was not supposed to arrive in Berlin as a wild card and beat the reigning Queen's champion in her first match. She was certainly not supposed to come back from 1-4 down to defeat the world number 2 in straight sets. Each of those results carried its own context, its own caveats, and yet the accumulation of them tells a story that pure percentages cannot fully capture. There is a player here who, at 21 years old, in the middle of an accelerating grass court education, is figuring out how to compete at a level she has never reached before and doing it in real time on the biggest stages available to her. Whether that real-time learning continues for one more round or stops here depends on 80 minutes of tennis, give or take, on a Friday afternoon at the stuffy grass stadium. Svitolina has earned every ounce of the respect her 2026 season commands. Eala has earned the right to test her. Both of those things are true and neither cancels the other out. What happens on court will add a new data point to both careers, a data point that did not exist before this week because these two have never faced each other. No scouting report from a prior meeting. No muscle memory of a familiar matchup. Just two players, a grass court, a net, and the irreducible uncertainty of competition when the ball is finally in play. For Alex Eala, that uncertainty is not a threat. It is exactly where she has done her best work all month.